Hey there, everybody. Um, Today's topic is five red flags that your story will. Just in case I flubbed that up, okay, making sure we're good, we're live. So five red flags your story will never get published. So that's what we're going to dive in today. So, hey there, my name is Christy Brightwild, and I help writers who like to run to follow their passions. My goal is to simply inspire and support you to do more of what you love by sharing tips and inspiration about writing and running. And as you settle in, just leave a comment. Say if you're watching live, say hello. If you're watching the replay, just type replay, or you can say hello there as well. And if you find any value at all, just give me a like. Let me know. So this topic, five red flags your story will never get published. Um, Rejection goes along with the job of being a writer. It's just part of the job. And that is kind of similar to race car driving. So car crashes are just part of the job. But there are ways that you can minimize car crashes in your writing, which is these five red flags I'm going to share with you. So if your story has any one of these five red flags, then chances are it's probably not going to ever get published, at least not traditionally. And if you were to self publish it and it had some of these in there, chances are you will run into problems with your readers. They won't get your next things, etc., etc. So the first one is flat characters. You definitely don't want flat characters in your story. You want characters that are well rounded, defined, have depth to them, believable. Try to give them some um, desires and unique physical traits and fears so that they can become more well rounded and more believable. You definitely don't want to include a bunch of stereotypes or stereotypical characters or predictable characters because that's just not very fun for the reader. And you probably won't get published even if those characters are secondary or have a supporting role. You really want to try to stay away from that. The deeper your characters are, the better. The second one is no plot. So your story is basically the plot of your story is basically what happens, okay? So if there's a story, if your story, if people read it and they feel like not much is happening, then you're likely going to get feedback that says, hey, your story has no plot, okay? Plot is so varied and wide and deep and nuanced that it's hard to put it all in a couple of sentences here in a live stream. But just a big overview, another couple of things that could be wrong with your plot is if you're missing one of the major plot points, or maybe if your pacing is off, it can feel like you don't have a plot. Um, so it really needs to be well thought out, well plotted. And I'd say if you're missing one of the major plot points, then that's going to be the biggest reason that they would say, "Hey, your plot's not working for me. Something's missing. You've got a gaping hole in your story." Essentially, it could be like no plot, or maybe it's just super weak. There's just not enough happening, and it could play into the next one, which is no conflict. So if there's not a lot of conflict, it's also going to feel like there's not much plot or not much happening. The characters are bored, etc., etc. So with conflict, you want to make sure it's not weak conflict. You need to increase the stakes. Increase the stakes for your characters so that they are risking everything or it feels like what what is at risk or at stake is really really big, and if they don't get what they want, they're going to be in a lot of hot water. So keep the stakes high, and the conflict, make sure you have various levels of conflict at play. So that could be internal conflict with thoughts, beliefs, values, fears. It can be, person to person conflict. There's like five or seven of them that are out there. There's technology, setting. Some people put technology into setting. Um, but yeah, so setting can play to conflict as well, the weather. Um, so that's the third one, is conflict, because if you don't have strong conflict, or your stakes aren't high enough, it's a really good reason for an editor to turn your story down. The fourth one is that your setting isn't fresh or believable. So you really want your setting to stand out and be memorable, be enjoyable. And that doesn't mean that it has to be fantasy or science fiction, okay? Setting, to make it strong, believable, fresh, it's really based on the details that you choose to focus on and highlight as you describe the time period, the location, where they are. So make sure that you choose unique details to highlight. That will make it fresh. And then as you describe it, and you can even add emotion to the setting, and the setting can add to the characters in your story, it can add to the conflict, and it can be a very believable place. Um, so yeah, make sure you don't leave out your setting when you're writing. It's super important. The last one might be the most important one of all, the most elusive one, is theme. So know why, N-O, know why, but also know your why, K-N-O-W. So your why, you don't want people reading your story and saying, what was the point of that story? Like, so what? Who cares? Okay, you don't want people to have that thought or feeling after they read your story, whether it's published or not. So you're submitting to editors and agents. You don't want them to have that thought or feeling, because if they do, its chances are like you're done. Um, if everything else is super strong and the writing itself is also super strong, not just the story, then they might, hey, say, hey, your theme needs some work. Like, let's work with that. It just depends. It depends on how well that story resonates with them, and if they're willing to help you put that effort in towards kind of figuring it out to fix it. But the theme is really like your why you want to tell the story. Also, it plays into your characters. The characters can have a big why as to like the goal they're pursuing in the story. But basically, when the story's done, the reader reads it, they walk away. If you have a big enough why, they're going to want to either read the book again or share it with a friend or both. And that's a good thing, because word of mouth is huge for books and book success. I mean, look at TikTok, or book talk rather, on TikTok. So know your why, and sometimes you might not know it 100%. You're kind of there and you work through it. You might have to write, two or three versions, do some revisions as well before it really kind of bubbles to the surface. And then, but if you have at least a sense of it from the very beginning, it'll drive you and keep you going to the very end. But definitely make sure that the theme comes through, that readers can identify it, but they're not hit over the head with it. Because nobody likes stories to be didactic and say, you need to eat all your vegetables. So that was just the first thing that came to my mind. So as a recap, the first red flag is having flat characters in your story. The second red flag is no plot in your story, or a very weak plot. The third red flag is weak conflict or no stakes or not enough stakes. The stakes aren't high enough. So make sure you're utilizing various ways to work with conflict and up those stakes. The fourth red flag is setting. So make sure your setting is fresh and believable. Make sure you use unique descriptions and don't use cliches. And then the fifth one is know your why so that there actually is a why. Because if your story doesn't have a why, that's a huge red flag. So that is the 5 red flags that's going to guarantee your story will never get published. So make sure your story does not have those 5 red flags because I want to see your story get published. So if you like this video, leave a comment, leave a hello, press the like button. Tell me which one though, character, plot, conflict, setting, theme, which of the 5 do you feel that you're the best at writing? So put a comment in there and let us know which one you feel like you're the best at. So thank you so much for being here and listening. Until next time, run safe and write wild.